Jeff, we can't hear the broadcast.
No commentator audio at all.
Respective dual races, how much of a sense of urgency do you think that potentially puts on drivers that during the qualifying session are going to be starting mid-pack to rear the field, especially those open drivers that have to race their way into the main event?
It's always important to try to get track position. I think this race also, there's going to be some interesting play on it if you need to make a fuel stop. It's right on the edge. We'll see how many cautions we get. It's going to be fun. We're getting ready to roll on the action here.
Analyst going to lead us to the green here tonight. He'll do the same thing next week in the Daytona 250. The first of our two dual races are green. Madalinas and Christopher Heller, that front row. And keep an eye here in the early going. How aggressive or how passive will these drivers be, realizing that, 32 laps, not exactly a long distance here, but when it comes to super speedway racing, a lot can occur from the entrance of turn 1 all the way around to the exit of turn 4.
And Chris Heller with a great jump at the start, getting some help from, looks like Jeremy Pienta there, second in line. That top lane really kind of rolled pretty well right away to get us going. As Madalinas on that inside lane with Kep behind him there, sneaking back up into the picture.
So Heller with that outside advantage. Seen more drivers kind of migrate up to that middle groove after we took the green flag. We'll see if that holds true or if we'll still see a contingency on that inside line. As you mentioned, Madalena staying true to that double yellow line. Right behind him, Eric Kemp and then Shane Neiswanger, third car in line. Up there on the top side, the third car in line, that purple and white number 6, the Roku-sponsored Toyota of Jackson Sims. And I'm seeing quite a bit of daylight, at least for the moment here, amongst the first 2-3 rows. Not really a whole lot of pushing and shoving going on in the respective lanes.
A lot of them staying kind of in the same lanes that where they started. I imagine if you're mid-pack on back and you're somebody that maybe needs to get a good finish to lock in for next week's race, you're probably like, there might be a little early panic, like, man, it's going to be tough to move forward, as it looks like somewhat of a 2x2 gridlock so far. That top lane definitely seems to be better just right now. Just having the gaps in between them, they're still able to kind of hold ground. We'll, we talked about an opportunity to learn here. We'll see if Madalinas and Kep working together here on the bottom can pull even down the backstretch.
It'll be interesting to see here as well. Next week's main event race going to be 100 laps in length. So they're essentially here in these dual races running about a third of the distance that they would run in that one. For a lot of drivers out here that already know that they're locked into the field, of course, finishing top 25 in the series that just recently wrapped up, the Showdown Series, is this maybe an opportunity here as well, not only to potentially maintain or advance your starting position next week, but also learn a little bit here with these Xfinity cars at this venue. Maybe not only work with people that you already are comfortable racing around, but maybe make some new allies for next week as well.
For sure, new drivers out there, and a new car too. I mean, a lot of these drivers have been racing the truck for many years in this series, so to see the what would be the O'Reilly car in real life, another chance to learn that a little bit, see how it drives in the draft, and I think that's there's a couple opportunities to find some friends and maybe meet some new people here, because there are a lot of new young faces in this series this year. It'll be fun to watch them, see how they can compete with some of our usuals. Heller and Madalinas, two usuals up front right now, still side by side, keeping it pretty much even, pretty clean throughout the entire pack.
We started seeing that inside line get a little braver here. I don't know if they got more numbers down there, or if maybe Kemp was able to get a little bit closer to the back bumper, kind of get that bubble push to Madalinas, but they were about 2 car lengths back behind Chris Heller a few laps ago, and now Madalinas drew back up alongside of Heller. Now there's a little ground here down the back straightaway, but there you see that surge once again into turn 3, that inside line advantage. And that kind of is the give and take of a super speedway like Daytona, right? The shorter way around the racetrack gets the better entry. Then the car maybe tightens up a little through the center, scrubs off a little bit of speed coming off the corner, and that's where the outside lane's able to battle back. That's why we're gridlocked here since the drop of the green flag.
I also think that inside lane sometimes has a little bit of, it's kind of a hidden thing to think about, but there's a guide to the inside lane right to your left in that yellow line when you want to keep your car straight for the guy pushing you behind you. What a easy way to do it by just seeing what's to your left there. Well, when you're up on that outside lane, you don't even know where the lane's going to be. Sometimes it's maybe towards the middle of the racetrack, sometimes towards the top. Pienta doing a great job here pushing Heller up near the, kind of almost two-car tandem, able to drive away. I saw a little bit of that in the practice session these drivers got where they're trying to kind of do the two-car push and try to pull away from other drivers. I don't think that, it's a short-term thing, but there is something there that I think some of these drivers were learning.
Jeremy Pienta in that number 77 Chili's ride might be trying to channel a little Carson Hocevar. Saw him get his first career win in the Cup Series at Talladega this past Sunday, so he's kind of maybe hoping that lightning strikes twice over here on the virtual side at yet another super speedway at Daytona.
For sure. I know Jeremy was pretty pumped over the weekend to see his guy win, and going to try to mirror that tonight here in the duels. I think that I just feel like they're kind of able to get away a little bit, and then that bottom lane kind of rolls back to them. I see, looking farther back at Travis Hanby's been up 6 spots, Aiden DuPont up 10, so a little bit of movement for some of the drivers in the back half of the field. I think with it being somewhat single file back there, if any of them want to jump up, they can pass a couple cars and run that top lane. But right now, it's kind of almost a 2x2 gridlock for that top 15 or so, and that's going to make it really tough if you're farther in the back trying to gain track position right now.
Point that you brought up before we took the green that I think kind of bears repeating and embellishing a little bit is the fact that, normally back in the day, the dual races, all the purpose that it served was to set the starting lineup for the following Daytona race. But now, with points on the line, 10 points given out to the winner of this race, 1 point to 10th position, the top 10 all scoring points. We need to remember that this is a series that is not a win and you're in terms of their playoff system. It's the top 10 in the point stands at the conclusion of the regular season finale, which is going to be at the track Too Tough to Tame Darlington this season. How important could stage points here at the finish of this race maybe play into whether you're going to be one of those top 10 drivers by the time we get to the regular season finale in August?
Well, I think that, you always want to be stacking points, get as many as you can. You never know how many you're going to need to get in to that top 10. But the other little thing that I think about just seeing this is kind of like what we see in stage racing. We don't have stage racing in this league, but if you can go get 10, 9, 8 points, with the top 5 run tonight in your duel, that maybe gives you a little freedom next week if something happens, super speedway racing, something crazy happens, at least you still can get some points tonight to make it feel like not a total waste for your trip to Daytona for being here for 2 weeks here. So I think that's one thing, maybe a little bit of relief if you are able to get some points tonight, to know that you can maybe go for a win next week and race aggressive, and knowing that you have a couple points already in your pocket.
Like all 23 drivers are still up here in this lead pack. A little bit of a break there, back around looks like the 16th, 17th position. Some drivers, I think, for the most part, as we see the battling up here at the front, it's not aggressive battling, but I think there's some other drivers back there. As I said, different drivers with different agendas, just kind of in ride mode right now. So a lot of them back there knowing that they're already locked into the Daytona 250 field next week. I saw Spencer Owens back there, Rod Fast now. So they're just maybe just riding for the moment, waiting to see if chaos happens up ahead of them. But I mean, if we're going to improve our starting position, when is the time to go? Because I don't know if necessarily these drivers are pushing it to the max right now, but we're seeing the 16 of Heller on the top, the 7 of Madeline's on the bottom, not really being able to gain an advantage. If it's tough enough for the leaders up here towards the front to be able to clear each other, I would think it'd be even tougher for drivers middle to the rear of the field to be able to make forward progress.
Yeah, it's, there's not much for a variable, at least early on in this race. Obviously, you said it, everyone's kind of in a pack together. You almost wonder, if a lap car would come up, that sometimes will mess up with the draft, or or if somebody here maybe potentially gets a bad push or something and gets kind of sent out of the pack a little bit, that maybe would change the energy enough to give the opportunity for some of those drivers in the back. I think that's what we're gonna have to see if that happens here at some point. But yeah, for now it is very interesting to see how kind of just locked in they are. And like I said, early on there had been a little bit of nerves for some of the drivers in the back, thinking like, man, if I can't move up, what's my opportunity? So we'll see if someone gets aggressive and if things get a little crazy mid-pack as people try to maybe make it 3 wide.
Also point out that even before points are handed out at the conclusion of this dual race, one driver already is your points leader. That'd be Hunter Madalinas. He ended up getting a bonus point, capturing the Daytona 250 pole earlier on this evening. So he's the only driver so far that has managed to score points, or in this case, a point towards the playoffs. As you see him there on that inside line, continuing to try and lead the way. We have information as well that for Hunter Madalinas, whether he ends up finishing this race with the victory, finishing in the middle rear of the field, or even finishing on the tow hook, he is guaranteed that he will start next week's race from the pole position. Same deal for Jared Darling, who we'll see be the pole sitter for the upcoming second dual race as he qualified for the outside of the front row.
Bit of a opportunity for those guys just to know, like, hey, if something happens tonight, at least you get your track position next week, especially as you're learning right now that how important it is. 14 laps into this race, Madalinas is really just hasn't lost the position as far as being down on that inside, but just maybe a little bit of track position at times with that top lane getting by him, but now back rolling to the lead side by side with Heller. Both Heller and Pienta drivers that are going to need to lock in tonight with a good finish. So it'll be really interesting to see what, are they potentially just kind of waiting it out right here, knowing that this is a good spot for them. That's kind of an interesting spot to be in if you want to maybe go race for a win, but maybe it's more important just to make sure that you're racing next week.
Big wiggle there out of Eric Kempfen, the 63. I was just about to mention that inside line, it seemed to find some momentum, but maybe that wiggle might end up stalling that momentum out immediately again, as that top side again, now it comes around the outside, and Heller trying to get himself clear of the 7 machine. It has been back and forth, literally been a rubber band of momentum for the respective lines, but I was going to bring up here as well, not only for Hunter Madalinas, is he going to start next week from the pole position, but also you get that #1 pit stall as well. And I think something that we maybe take for granted with the action we'll see of double wide, 3 wide out on the racing surface at the super speedways is just how much can be gained or lost on pit road. Not only for drivers here tonight is it an opportunity to make it into the field, but the higher you finish up in the finishing results, the better your starting position will be for the Daytona 250, and the closer towards the exit of pit lane your pit stall potentially will be, which could be a deciding factor next week.
Yeah, and it's nice to also know, like, it's one of those pit stalls that obviously you know where it's at, where if all of a sudden you qualify 10th, you're like, okay, where's that? It's somewhere in this area. At least, when you're on the pole, you know exactly what pit stall you're at. So that sometimes is the biggest advantage, just to know where you got to pull in when you come to pits. It always seems like that is something a lot of drivers, that's the last thing they worry about, is all of a sudden they're coming down to pit road and you're like, oh wait, I forgot to remember where my pit stall is. And that's one advantage to being the leader, and having that #1 stall. Man, I don't know. I'm thinking we'll see as we get a little later in this race. The fuel window that I was seeing was roughly about 30 laps. Well, with the 32 lap race, I kind of figured, we didn't have a lot of pace laps. We're gonna, potentially see a caution or two. So I'm thinking, well, they probably just wouldn't need to pit then. But here we're sitting here running green. I don't know if there's a potential for getting down to the end and needing a little bit of fuel, and what that would put, the strategy and how that would change for some of these drivers with a lot on the line to qualify for next week.
And to your point there, if indeed we are close on fuel, I would have to think that the two drivers that we kind of set the tone as to whether they can make it or not would be the 7 of Madalenas and the 16 of Heller, because they have led their respective lines pretty much since the drop of the green flag, being the lead cars. They're using up a lot more fuel, not having the benefit of draft out in that clean air. Everybody else behind potentially could be able to have better fuel numbers since they've been in the slipstream.
For sure. It's got to be and there's not really an opportunity to, sometimes you get that time where you're working with the, drivers and you feel like, oh, I can move over and you lead for a while. There's not really a way to do that with the way that this pack is racing right now. Obviously, that would just really change the momentum and really mess with your line if you did that. So for Heller and Madalenas, they're going to be, Pienta up the hill a little bit there, but we'll see if that, if maybe later in this run, a little bit of wear in the tires. There's not a ton of wear on these super speedways, but it might surprise some of these drivers just how they're exiting off the corner. But yeah, it'll be fun to see if maybe just those front two are the ones that are going to be in trouble as far as on fuel.
Saw a little wiggle there after Eric Kemp gave a bump to Hunter Madalenas exiting out of the tri-oval. And yeah, you mentioned about the fact that normally tires don't wear all that much, but we are in the daytime conditions here. We are in Florida, and obviously as well, we've ended up running now, going on 19 laps of green flag racing. I am noticing a lot more movement out of these race cars, slip sliding up through the corners here. You mentioned about Pienta kind of getting a little out of shape. I'm seeing more drivers that were running the middle line migrating about a half lane further up on the entry to the corner. Could handling become an issue here for these drivers the longer we go on, especially too with the fact that the fuel load, the heaviness in the back of the race car is evaporating every lap.
Yeah, it's this is really, we talked about the opportunity to learn. This is really the practice session for that. Even though we had a practice session, opportunity for these drivers before this race, even last night, a practice session for them to use. It's really tough to go out there and run 20 or 30 laps in a pack. Everybody's got different agendas. You go run 3 or 4 laps on fresh tires and then come down pit road. Then you maybe go back out with 3 or 4 laps. So you don't often run in practice for 20 to 30 laps. So we'll see. Right now, this is your opportunity to see how the car will handle in the pack late in the run, and maybe take that knowledge to next week.
Just noticing a couple of these drivers a little bit further back, just outside of the top 5. 73 of Cooper back there has got no primary sponsor on the hood. I almost wonder if he might be racing for a primary sponsorship here in this duel.
I see the split-second broadcasting car of Gavin Fitzgerald. I don't know if it's in the budget to help that 73 out if he makes the show, but yeah, that's interesting. It's fun to see the new paint schemes of these drivers maybe running something a little more unique even tonight. To see if some of them change for next week, but maybe you want to save your main new scheme for the opener, the official opener next week. But I think a lot of them also running the started off tonight, obviously running the car that they're going to run next week, and we'll see these guys rolling around Daytona in a full pack.
Of course, as we mentioned, this is a newly named series, Great Lake Premier Series. Formerly was the racing series with the trucks, now over with the Xfinity cars here, and a lot more movement there on that outside line again there. Pienta having his hands full off of turn 2. I am a little bit interested in the fact that we've seen a lot of experimentation so far in this race. One thing we have not seen these drivers really experiment with is locking the bumpers or trying the pushing down the straightaways. Is it just that it's a little too early, there's too much at stake right now, or are they maybe going to completely save that for when we get to the Daytona 250 next week?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, there's a little bit more to lose for some of these drivers up there, but I also think, like you said, it's hard to drive these things right now, and even when they're somewhat early on in the run too. So I think that might be, the part of it here is the combination of just a lot to lose if you make a mistake. See a little moving back and forth mid-pack there, but also just that these cars are a little tough to drive, and the heat of the day here, a little bit more slicker racetrack, but yeah, you see the gaps right now, a little bit of sliding, a lot more sliding around than earlier on in this run. So definitely seeing that come to fruition here.
you got to think that the drivers that are going to be participating in the upcoming second duel, keeping an eye on what's going on here, trying to get a little bit of an idea of what to expect when they eventually take to this racetrack for their 32-lapper. Which duel do you think maybe would have the most pressure? Is it the drivers here in this first duel with not really out of the gate knowing exactly what to expect, not having maybe another field to be able to do some homework on? Or do you think it is that second group and the fact that now you go out there, you've made all those notes, and maybe what you feel is completely opposite of what you were planning?
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Oh, we got a yellow. It sounds like. Oh yeah, we do. Multiple
Big
cars
wreck.
in the back.
At least half a dozen drivers involved in this one. We mentioned about the fact that there are a number of open drivers trying to make their way into the available 15 slots for next week's Daytona 250. When you see a wreck like that, your mind immediately goes to those open drivers if any of them were involved, and could that have just spelled the end of their hopes of participating in next week's first points race?
Yeah, see, Rod Fausnow was involved in this. Logan Hardy, who was obviously he's one of our drivers, a newer driver trying to race his way in. We'll have to take a look at the replay here and see. This yellow obviously is going to help with those drivers making it without needing a fuel stop. I think we'll be good as long as we don't have a green-white checker in this. But yeah, a little bit of a stack up, and then involving the 3 with Travis Hanby there, just kind of maybe got a early checkup and have to see it again.
James Shiflett in the 28 also getting a piece of that. At first, I thought that the incident happened a little further up, but it was a bump from the 31 into the 9, and it just kind of looked like maybe there was some checking up that was taking place, and it just accordion effects backwards. That's about what the 5th or 6th car in line of that stack up where the initial contact actually takes place.
So easy. We saw just before this, we saw Gavin Fitzgerald kind of run to the middle to kind of make some ground up, and it worked for him just initially there. And I don't know if that just kind of stacked up that line in front of him, and then the 3 and 91 just a little bit farther back, kind of maybe just not paying attention to that stack. The stack up didn't get to them, but obviously you might start slowing down a little bit. The other thing I've noticed here at Daytona, it's just so easy when you get up into that high lane, when you're drafting up there, to just maybe kind of have to let out a little bit just to make sure that your car is turning. Every once in a while, it just all of a sudden starts to kind of plow and go up the hill, and maybe that's potentially what happened to that 3 of Hamby. But yeah, a handful of drivers down on pit road fixing damage. Some of them, you never know with some of these drivers needing to race their way in tonight. It's going to be based on best position through both duels. So you're going to want to put up the best position you can no matter what, because who knows what happens in the next duel. If you get a bunch of the open cars crashing out in that one, that it might not take a great finish. Might be just a mid-pack finish if you can get one.
Driver that was kind of riding at the back for most of this was the 23 of Spencer Owens. We saw him sneak his way on through, so he'll pick up a couple of spots there. And I almost feel like if you're any of the drivers involved in that or an open driver, as long as the engine is still running and you can go out there and turn laps, we're going to be coming around to more than likely, maybe 5 to go here in this duel race. You're almost obligated to go out there and just finish out the race, because something might happen in these final 5 laps. More open drivers could get involved in an incident, and you can make your way by and still have a shot of making the field next week.
Sure, you never know. These races are not done till they're done, and with the way that iRacing, you have the final lap potentially. That they hold back the yellow flag and let them race back to the line. If you're anywhere within that pack, or even just a little bit behind the pack, if a big crash happens, you can still get a solid finish. With a big wreck on the final lap. So, got to stay in it and keep it rolling. Stay on the lead lap if you can. It looks like to me, just looking at our drivers here, we're gonna have a couple drivers in the back. Hunter Brittle spending a lot of time on pit road. James Shiflett. So a couple drivers still working on damage. They're gonna go a lap down, but those are 2 there that are locked in for next week. So
See a couple of drivers leaving pit road. Gonna try and catch up to the field here before they go back green. Lights out on the pace car, so it will indeed be a 5-lap shootout to close out this first of the 2 Daytona 250 duels. Heller's going to take the inside line here with Pienta to his outside. We saw those two working together pretty much the entirety of this race. Joey Logano coined a phrase for super speedway racing, the okie dokie, where one driver will kind of let the other driver in so they can work together. Do you think that these two might end up putting together an okie dokie strategy here to keep them up at the front of the field? Or do you think with as few laps as we have now, they're basically saying, all right, we had the same mind, we had the same agenda in the early going, now it's every man for himself?
Yeah, you know, I think it was working well for Pienta and Heller running that top lane, and I think that would be the way to go. If you're Heller, I think you're probably thinking, well, that was working for us. I'd love to keep it that way because it means that I'm gonna win this race. If you're Pienta, you know, do you know that Heller is another guy that needs to race his way in, and that's a guy that, like, if you can beat him, that's gonna be a for sure way to lock in. Obviously, a top 6 or 7 tonight will for sure get you in to next week if you're one of these open drivers, but there's also a win, and you know how drivers get when a win is on the line. We'll see if Heller is able to slide up in front, or if he takes Madalinas as his new partner in this.
Here we go. Was that the only caution that we're going to see here in this dual race as the pace car leads the field into the hands of Christopher Heller? Great launch for the 16, maybe too good of a launch there, as Madalinas will go side by side with Pienta for the second position. Let's see if Heller will go up to that middle groove. Indeed he will, right back up to the top to pick up the 77. So it looks like maybe that launch that he got was all by design to be able to then drag the 77 to his bumper, and neither of them lose much momentum.
Yeah, I wonder what I see Gavin Fitzgerald now down in that inside lane behind Kep. Is he satisfied with running where he's at? We saw him run in the middle lane kind of before that yellow, trying to gain some positions. We'll see if there's any drivers up in this pack that are going to get aggressive here and try to break this up, as we see again that front 4, really front 5 if you count in Jackson Sims. They're up on the outside pushing the third car there. Really have all kind of been in that same position so far.
Forget that not only do the top 10 drivers that finish this dual race end up getting points towards the season, but also whoever ends up winning this race, not named Hunter Madalinas, they would start on the inside of the second row for the Daytona 250 next week.
And a spot that we've seen he's back and forth. A lot of these drivers back and forth right now. Maybe get a little bit more aggressive with the pushes.
Normally at Pocono or IndyCar racing, we call that snaking. That's more like worming right there. It's a great save by Eric Kep. Might have gotten a bump there from Gavin Fitzgerald. And as he gathers it up off of turn 4, that stalls out that entire inside line. You see Zachary Henry making his way around via the top side, and that's broken up the field quite a bit up here at the front.
Yeah, James Wagner able to jump up into that top 10 battle and kept on the outside, but it's going to make this entire front 7 or 8 here single file. We got 7 cars kind of pulling away. 8th, Zach Henry there trying to stay connected with them. That's really going to change the energy here and see how this is going to play out. I think you're now going to see these drivers middle of this front pack here make a move at some point. You gotta, with the opportunity now that there is no outside lane, you can maybe try to build a run here in the final laps and try to make something happen. It looks like maybe Aiden Dupont on the outside getting some help from Zach Henry. Ooh, kept back down on the apron again.
Can't pass down below the yellow line, but he did not advance his position. That car has been pretty light off of turn 4 the last couple of laps, as he's still able to keep it pointed in the right direction. And to your point there, for Heller, Pienta, they're trying to lock themselves into the field. For other drivers behind them, Jackson Sims, he was a multi-time win in the Showdown Series just before this season began. You got Shane Neiswanger right behind him, Madalinas. They've got nothing to lose. They know that they're going to be racing next Sunday regardless of what happens, so third place on back. That might be the spot where we end up seeing those jumps to the top side to maybe try and snipe this duel victory.
Yeah, I think Sims and Nicewanger, I'm waiting for them to maybe... Nicewanger looks like he's backing up a little bit here. White flag. One more time around. We'll see if there's a run built here. As those front three are kind of getting away. We'll see. I think that 49 is going to definitely have a run here. And Manalese is going to jump to his outside.
A guarantee, at least the top two, they're going to stay committed. That double yellow line saying if you're going to go around, you got to do it. That's the highway. Oh, wow, what a save by Madalenas, as well as I think that was Aiden DuPont. But now we're wrecking down the back straightaway. At least 3-4 cars spinning to the inside. DuPont is around. Madalenas is involved, but the green flag still remains out here as we race back to the checkers.
Oh, Pieta's going to get spun. Sims goes around, it's going to be Heller by himself.
Nobody in the rearview mirror. More contact around third place as Heller crosses with the win. Henry made his way through for second, and it looks like Selway is going to snipe a podium finish here in the first duel.
What a wild ending there. We talked about it, that final lap, you get some incidents that can really mix up the finish. And it did. Chris Heller was able to still grab the victory, but man, Zach Henry able to slide up into second. Daniel Selway, we really didn't talk about him at all in that 32-lap race, finishing third.
Well, the way the field looked when they took the white flag was completely different when they came around to take the checkered flag, and now for Chris Heller, he knows he's going to be carrying 10 valuable points into next week's season opener in the Daytona 250. He knows he will start on the inside of the second row behind Hunter Madalenas next week. But the question mark now for a lot of drivers that came into this race not knowing if they were going to be partaking in next week's festivities or not is where did they end up finishing in relation to the other open cars, and did they lock themselves up a spot in next week's race?
For Heller, you know, we talked about it. The ability to hold that track position is, you know, was going to be key to making sure that he stayed up front. But then we saw Jeremy Pienta, who obviously was kind of in the same boat with him, working with Heller, and then you know, got through all those wrecks on the last lap until he got to turn 4 and then gets turned. We'll have to see the replay here if we have an opportunity to look at it to see what exactly happened. But Pienta lost a lot of positions there. Makes you kind of nervous that might hurt him towards making the field for next week.
Yeah, normally in Super Speedway racing, we have wrecks that we refer to as the big one. This one, I think, could be classified as the long one, as it pretty much started from turn 2 about a third of the way down the back straightaway and didn't end until they were coming out of turn 4. We even had a couple of drivers sliding down through the infield grass coming across the start-finish line. Here is absolute pandemonium here in this first duel race. Here's a look at how it pretty much started here. This is with the 77 of Pienta. Shane Nicewanger trying to take a look to the inside, got to the left rear quarter panel. Big shot there to the front end of that Chili's machine. And again, it's amazing in Super Speedway racing just how quickly in the blink of an eye your fortunes can change. Pienta at that point in time was clearly in a transfer position. Now the jury is out, waiting for the dust to settle to see if he still is going to be in one of those open transfer spots, as this is what initially ended up causing the major wreck here on the final lap.
Yeah, it looked like, you know, previous to this we saw Aiden DuPont running that top lane, and Madalenas moved up. I don't blame Madalenas. We talked about it. He's locked in. He's going to have the pole, just trying to maybe gain some points, try to get up there and maybe battle for the win. And when he jumped up there, I just don't know if him and Aiden's, you know, bumpers kind of were lined up very well. It just seemed like a bad bump, and it kind of just stacked everybody up. And I think final lap, you got a lot of drivers that are not going to lift or give you room in that situation. So I think that just kind of, you know, everybody in a bad spot in the end. But yeah, that's gonna do it for a wild ending to you know, basically 90% of that race was pretty calm.
And that just showed as well, you know, what drivers were willing to do here. This is a qualifying race by all rights and purposes for next week, and they were 5 wide down the back straightaway here. on the final lap. Well, it looks like we are going to be able to get a word with our Duel 1 race winner. Saw the chaos in the rearview mirror and clean racetrack out the windshield. Chris Heller, it's the people up here in the broadcast booth. You got a copy?
I do.
Man, I'll tell you what, it kind of seemed like it was all plan A here tonight. Qualified well, had that good starting track position, and then maintained it the entire race, pretty much leading that outside line the entirety of this one before eventually leading us to that final restart. It looked like a lot of drivers, for the most part, had their agendas all planned out, but this is Daytona. Not everything seems to go according to plan. Seemed like that was the case, though, for the 16 here tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did go to plan for the most part, outside of my teammate, the 77. Just met him today, so I'm trying to catch his name, Jeremy. Yeah, it didn't go quite as planned. It was supposed to be just me and him, 1-2, hopefully, and he got caught up in that altercation coming off of 4 there, and hopefully he's able to make the race. I'm not really sure how it all works out yet. I'm still trying to figure that one out, but hopefully he makes the race as well.
We talked about the fact that in this type of a race, a qualifying race for next week's Daytona 250, a lot of opportunity for drivers to be able to experiment. You spent pretty much the entire of this race up there at the front, so what kind of experimentation were you able to do in the position you were running?
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out how to manage lanes, try to keep them side by side. Try not to get too far out there, and I was just trying a couple different things. Also trying to see if I could save a little bit of fuel while I was leading as well. And it seemed like it was working out. I was going to be able to make it barely. I was going to be sputtering at the line if we would have went green there, but it all ended up working out.
So 32 laps here tonight, 100 circuits wait on deck for next week, and you will be starting that race now with the victory in this first duel race from the inside of row number 2. How much can a victory like this do for the confidence going into next week's season opener?
I mean, the confidence is up just because I was able to win, right? But we were also working very, very well as a team with the Spectrum boys. But coming to the line at the big race, it's probably going to be a little bit more hectic because everybody's going to be every man for themselves versus kind of getting protected by my teammates, which definitely helped out tonight for sure.
Well, Chris, congratulations on the job well done here this evening, getting Speed Week started off in a big way, picking up the checkered flag here in this first duel race. You can now catch your breath and take in the events of the second duel race as you get yourself ready to start from the inside of the second row in next week's Daytona 250. Before we let you go, though, the floor is yours for thank you, sponsors, and shout-outs.
Yeah, I just want to thank the entire Spectrum team for allowing me to race with them. My teammates, 77 and Jeremy, Hunter Madalinas, Gavin Fitzgerald, and Elliott's in the next race, so looking forward to see if he can get himself a win in that race. Thank you to Eric for allowing me to race on his team this season, and everyone else, and you guys for the broadcast.
That's Chris Heller. He's your winner in this first duel race here tonight at Daytona. Congratulations once again, and best of luck next week in the Daytona 250.
Thank you.
So as Chris Heller celebrates the checkered flag here tonight, drivers will now get themselves situated and prepared for the upcoming second duel race. We are going to step aside for a brief break here in between our Daytona duels and then be back here for the continuation of Speed Weeks at the World Center of Racing. So don't go anywhere. Another 32 lapper on deck here from the Daytona International Speedway coming up in just a few moments here on Split Second Broadcasting. One duel is in the books, another duel yet to be run as we continue on Speed Weeks here from Daytona in preparation for next week's Daytona 250, the first race of Season 12 of the Great Lakes Premier Series. If you've been with us since the start, welcome back. If you're just tuning in, welcome. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Ross Brockman. And Ross, normally when it comes to duels at Daytona, there's one duel that's relatively calm, there's one duel that's absolutely chaotic. Well, we had a little mixture of both back in the first duel, so the question is, was that the chaotic duel or the calm duel as we now get ready for another bunch of drivers to pretty much determine their Daytona fate.
I was thinking, does it mean this one's going to be crazy for 90% and then a calm finish just to be the opposite, or not? I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know what we're gonna get. I think a lot of drivers learned a lot watching that first one. I think that's one of the most unique part of these dual races is you get this opportunity to watch another race. Like a lot of drivers don't do that very often because you're obviously getting the opportunity to race in every single race. So I think they all learned a lot about this the two wide style of drafting that was working and what wasn't. And I think that you're going to see maybe potentially a little bit more aggression and maybe a little bit more, collaboration as far as trying to keep track position because they saw what worked in that first one.
I think that maybe the winner of the first dual race, Chris Heller, would say that the best way to stay out of trouble here is run up front and stay up front, because that's exactly what he was able to do. One thing that we noticed back in that first duel was most drivers that qualified mid-pack rear of the field, that's kind of where they rode, and it's not necessarily clear whether that was by design or if really seeing the lanes gridlocked, if there really was no opportunity to make forward progress. With the drivers that we've got here in this race, talking about those open drivers trying to race their way into the field, two of those open drivers start on the front rows, so that starting track position could be pivotal for them.
Yeah, looking at the Jared Darling, you kind of get that second opportunity when you're a driver that qualifies second. You have to start on the pole. You only get the pole for your dual race, but you'll be on the outside pole next week. So that's one thing that's kind of unique. He doesn't get to learn really what that outside lane is doing. But yeah, I think that a handful of these drivers that qualified well, Corey Abbott trying to make his way in, Jared Duda, Christian Peterson, some big names that have had a ton of success last year in Great Lakes that are needing to qualify based on their points situation. So it'll be fun to see if some of those guys are able to race their way in and keep that track position.
It was interesting when we talked with Heller after his victory in the first dual race, mentioning about the fact that he had some teammates he was working with, and another teammate in Elliott Henderson is here in this dual race. That's one of the kind of blessings and or curses about dual races, is with the split fields, sometimes you're able to find teammates and friends in your dual race. Other times you might be on an island of your own, so it may be a case of your friends are where you find them for some of these drivers here in this second dual race as they look to make their way into next week's Daytona 250 field. iRacing pace car makes that left-hand turn to pit road. The driver who clocked in the second fastest lap time in qualifying, Jared Darling, will bring his Ford to the stripe and get dual race number 2 under green. Abbott on the outside line, going to get a pretty good push there from Jared Duda in the 53. And he was actually almost bump drafting him all the way through the corner. Bumpers were really close. Again as well, you can see he's actually got the bumpers locked with the 43 down the back straightaway. This is something we didn't really see many of the drivers do back in the first dual race.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that tandem ability if you want to do it. And then Ashton Lawson jumped to the outside. I think that initially you'll feel like, there's an opportunity to make a run, just the way that the restart goes through 1 and 2, and he tried it, but lost some ground as the 2x2 kind of happens again. A quick gamble that ultimately not really going to pay off, but that middle to top lane is the one that's really working. We've got some stack ups here in the mid pack. Everybody kind of getting straightened back out and back rolling.
Yeah, Christian Peterson, the number 75, that red and white machine down there, was one of those drivers involved in that stack up. Got a little squirrely, but everybody keeps it gathered up, at least for the moment. And it's interesting, we saw the 26 of Ashton Lawson get shuffled out in that third lane and get put towards the back. He's trying that third lane again. Mentioned about the fact that the criteria of making the field, being locked into the field, was being inside the top 25 in the Showdown series that ran prior to the start of Season 12 of the Great Lakes Premier Series. Ashton Lawson was the champion of that series with 3 victories during the course course of that season. So do you think that maybe singled him out as a public enemy number one, a guy that we're not going to work with here at Daytona, not allow him the opportunity to have that good starting track position next Sunday, or I'm sorry, make that to next Tuesday?
I think, Lawson, I'll be honest. I think there's a lot of drivers that are nervous to work around him because he's aggressive. And I think that obviously that's also what gets him the success, being able to, contend for that championship during the off season. Ashton's very fast. He's really quick, but I think sometimes the aggression sometimes that makes it a little scary to work around him, and you may be nervous that at any moment he's going to ditch you. So far that outside lane, he got some help from Barber-Gelada, moved up, and now he's up in that top 5 after falling back initially.
Yeah, it looks like the top 4 on that outside line going to find themselves clear of the Hellman's Chevrolet number 9 of Enoch Hancock on that inside. Lawson not quite clear off of turn 2, but the front 3 are there with Corey Abbott out in front. And then right behind him, Matthew Weeks and Elliot Henderson in the 37. Now he'll jump to the outside line there all by himself. Might make it work against Weeks, but look at Lawson, got 2 for the price of 1 through 3 and 4.
Yeah, what a great job. I think that worked out perfect for Lawson. We haven't really seen the bottom work until Henderson made that outside move on Weeks. It pulled him back and kind of then also forced Abbott to fall back. And that was just a perfect timing for Lawson and Barber-Gelada to jump down on this inside lane and take the lead. What a great move there. That's going to bring this bottom lane with Hancock, Duda, and Darling back up to the front here. As that top lane is going to have to kind of regroup. Henderson losing a ton of positions mid-pack now.
Yeah, and that might go back to what we were mentioning about the fact that, for the most part, all the Spectrum cars were in that first dual race able to work together. Elliot Henderson doesn't have really any teammates to be able to work with here in this dual race, so he had to wait to slot back in line, and he has faded all the way back outside of the top 10. Looks like he's back probably around the 15th position right now, and he was running up as high as 2nd place.
Yeah, just kind of riding now, just kind of regrouping, maybe finding who you can work with to move back up there. We saw how tough it was to gain those positions without the energy change that we just saw a couple laps ago in the pack. You can't really move forward when it's this 2x2. So yeah, it's got to be a little frustrating to lose your the positions that way. We see Darling kind of poking out a little bit there. No, sorry, that was true. That was up on the outside lane. Is that Kressel in the 40? But pretty much a single double file, I guess we'll call it.
And Lawson, looks like a bunch of Chevrolets actually all lined up there on the inside line with Lawson, Barber-Gelada, and now you've got Hancock right there as well. Remember, he was leading the inside line. Now 3rd car in line here, and that's allowed him to be able to move a little bit further up as he's door to door with Abbott in the 43. Almost complete polar opposite. Well, as soon as I say that, it was almost the complete polar opposite of what we saw back in the first dual race, where the middle line seemed to be the preferred lane, and Lawson's going to get a tap from Abbott. Hard in the wall goes Barber-Gelada, and this is going to be the huge one. This might be just about every driver in the field with the exception of a few. Peterson's upside down on his roof there, that 75. Oh, man.
It's a tough spot to be in for a lot of drivers, pretty much like you said it. A ton of drivers, the whole field in many ways. I see about 5 drivers that were able to catch the pace car here. Everyone else kind of either had to stop or were involved in that. I see 3 drivers already towing back to pit road. Another 6 or 7 already on pit road, driving back. We're going to have to see. I think this was a product of Ashton Lawson got a big bump and trying to just get kind of straightened back up. I think he got someone who was inside that 43 of Abbott. I believe that's who it was. Bump here. Kind of gets him squirrely, and I think he just got to the inside, and then Ashton thought he had the opportunity to get back in front, and it was too late.
one of the toughest areas of a super speedway to be able to avoid a wreck going into the corner, because drivers can migrate up the banking to the outside wall. They can also come off the wall and slide down the self-cleaning racetrack to the inside, and it's all a matter of just hoping that by the time you get to the vicinity of the wreck that you're able to get through it. I mean, look at this. It's literally, what, about second place on back that got involved. I'm counting maybe 5 cars right there that managed to get through. Matthew Weeks, maybe minimal damage on his machine. There's the 18 going through the grass. Matt Durr completely avoiding all the chaos. But, boy, there's going to be a lot of drivers here that are going to be running the remainder of this race, should they be able to continue with pretty significant damage. And if you're one of those drivers that came into this race vying for a transfer spot, not locked into next week's field, this could make things a little bit even more nerve-wracking for you for the remainder of this dual race.
Yeah, and this is also going to really change just how the race happens over the last, the second half of this race here, because now we're going to have, a ton of damaged cars falling off the pace. The field is really going to be only, already a half a field because of a duel. It's going to be pretty small group up front battling for the win in this. I think if you're in this incident, if you were able to drive back to pit road, you have to fix as much damage as you can, stay on the lead lap, because I think you could still score a top 10 with this, just because so many people were involved. So we'll have to see what that battle is like for getting into the show with maybe potentially some damaged race cars racing for positions to get in, and then just a matter of maybe a couple of them even battling for points if you're able to still score a top 10.
A lot of big names involved in that wreck as well. We saw with that zoomed in shot there, obviously the 43 of Abbott, the 75 of Christian Peterson, but Elliott Henderson, who we saw had gotten shuffled out 3 wide to the rear of the field, he was caught up in that. A lot of drivers that have found success here at this venue in previous seasons of the Great Lakes Premier Series, running into trouble here in this dual race. And you brought up a good point as well. If you're able to drive it back to pit road and maybe able to salvage a top 10, hey, 19th, 20th place starting position is a lot better than starting at the rear of the field next week.
Yeah, just kind of looking at the finishing order from the first duel and where some of those drivers that were the open cars trying to lock in where they finished. We had 3 up in the top 4. Obviously, they're all locked in: Chris Heller, Daniel Selway, and Justin Vandermeerl. But then we had a kind of a break there, and 7th, 8th, and 9th in that other duel were all open cars. So if you're any of these drivers here, I think if you're able to finish anywhere from that 7th, 8th, or 9th, or even better those, you're going to lock yourself in, of course. And then from there, it falls down to 11th, 12th, and 13th. You're going to want to get a top 10 to maybe jump in front of those ones. Just trying to get a better finish in this duel to break the tie from the other duel. That's going to be the key for some of these drivers still rolling out there. So we said a top 10 get points in this race, but it may also be a top 10 is going to be the difference in making the show.
And you mentioned this back at the close of the second dual race when we ended up having a bit of a breakaway up at the front of the field. It's a lot tougher to be able to generate the energy necessary to make moves and make forward progress when you have less cars in a pack. We're looking at this right now. There's about 8 or 9 drivers right here that don't seem to have any visible damage or very minimal damage from that wreck. It's going to be tough for those guys here, 2nd, 3rd, 4th row on this restart, to be able to generate enough energy to get up here and fight for the race lead.
Yeah, and the other thing you got to be careful of is we have a lot of drivers fixing damage and coming off of pit road right now. They're getting caught up, but they have to start single file, so that's going to already kind of hurt their energy as far as when they get rolling. And then you might have discrepancies in damage. Some of them might be a little slower than others, so it's going to be important. If you're one of those drivers that doesn't have a ton of damage, but you're in that back, this restart is very important. We see them still kind of trying to get lined up back there. This you could win or lose this race in your position, potentially just right here on this restart.
Sometimes it's like the flip of a switch in super speedway racing, how fortunes can change for the better or for the worse. as the green flag comes back out here on lap 11. It's going to be Enoch Hancock, who started this race from 10th position on the inside of the front row. Outside of the front row, Aspen Martin, who out of the 23 drivers that took the green this dual race, started 22nd.
That's we saw how tough it was to pass. The best way to get track position is watch all your other competitors. I see that that 42, I think, was sliding through the grass. See a couple of these drivers that I saw down in the grass. That one was probably the move to get you through that wreck. And here Aspen Martin's going to have the opportunity to take the lead here.
We're going to get an idea as these drivers get themselves up to full song of just who is still competitive and who is going to be out there trying to salvage what they can. Looks like maybe about 13 drivers right now in this lead group. Got Elliot Henderson trying to stay latched on to the tail end of the field here, along with Nicholas Caressel. It might be a case for those drivers as well, depending on what the damage is like and how aerodynamically deficient those cars could be, that they're able to stay up in this lead group so long they're in somebody's draft. It could be a case if they end up trying to lead a line, it's like sticking out a parachute. All of a sudden you've got all that drag with the damage and you find yourself falling towards the back again.
And this car is very sensitive to other cars around it. You get side by side. I see a little bit farther back there is that Cressel and Henderson side by side. Those kind of 2x2s back there. They're going to kind of pull each other back and maybe lose the draft if they're not careful back there. So it looks like Henderson may be getting clear there, but this front pack here kind of looks like most everybody in this pack looks pretty clean. And right now, here comes Hancock, going to look to the outside. Martin.
Made sure to find out about this before we came on the air. The drivers that qualified for the front row, Madalinas and Jared Darling, regardless of where they finished in these respective dual races, they were guaranteed to start in those positions. Nobody happier about that news than Jared Darling, who was one of the drivers involved in that wreck, is still sitting on pit road getting damage repaired after being involved in that big one. Even though he will not reach the checkered flag more than likely here in this dual race, he will still be on that front row leading us to green next week.
See this push from Duda to Hancock, going to get him away, but then the kind of secondary push got Hancock sliding around a little bit through the tri-oval. It's tough to drive through that tri-oval, but you got to be careful, especially when you're getting a push. But yeah, that two-car draft kind of does, it doesn't necessarily get you away from the pack, for more than a, few seconds, but it does kind of pull your lane forward a little bit too. So if you can, gain that track position by sliding up a little bit and getting away from them and then pull your lane forward, that's just a way to continue to pull your line forward. So if it works, it works. So right now it looks like Jared Duda is really good at pushing. I'm going to try again. Be careful through this tri-oval.
Great to see these names enter into the Great Lakes Premier Series that I don't recognize, meaning that continuing to bring in new drivers every season. 3 of the top 4 right here are drivers that I had no prior knowledge of. Hancock, Martin, and Morgan there in the 35. Josh Morgan started this race from 14th place, but a name that I do recognize up here in Jared Duda in the 53. Normally, whenever we went to a short track, he was up there in like the top 5 drivers to watch. It's kind of interesting to see a guy that's a short track aficionado, see what he's able to do at the high banks of Daytona International Speedway, doing a good job right now, keeping that 9 out in front and preserving his spot second in the running order.
Sometimes the strategies at short tracks just make sure to keep the fenders on it. And in this duel, that was the key strategy to make it into this showdown between this top 9 here or so that we got. But yeah, just keeping it clean and ultimately running up front here. I think the energy is now kind of dissipated because we're down to only 9 cars here. I see Andrew Parr in the 97. Oh, we got one around.
Tony Manji just got spun. I think he got the 98 of Robin Durr. green flag will remain out as that car spun down to the inside of the racetrack below the double yellow line. So there you see Robin getting the car refired. We remain under green flag conditions, at least for the moment. But tough break there, as I was just about to mention the fact that both the Durs, Matthew and Robin, were running up there in this lead pack.
Yeah, I'm trying to kind of just keep position there. Both Durs are locked in, so you know, a little scare there as far as just losing the track position, but that broke it up. You know, Manji lost some momentum there, and that really sent this top 5 kind of getting away here now. And 7th and 8th kind of, or 6th and 7th here, falling back.
Like maybe Tony Manji and Brent Kingcott, that 2-car tandem, will be able to get up here, indeed make it a 7-car pack once again, but it is going to hurt Cy Jackson in the 2, who was a part of that lead group. He's lost the draft, and he's more than likely going to fade back to that, well, I was going to say second group, but the second group is a party of 1 in the form of the 97 of Andrew Parr. The field is very, very spread out from 8th position on back. A lot of drivers due to different levels of crash damage sustained back on lap 8.
I see Kingcott here jumping to the outside, trying to move up. Do or do not, there is no try when it comes to making this move. I don't know if that's worth it. You're gonna, you know, it looked like it kind of pulled Durr back, and then that top 4 was able to get away. So you know, I don't know what the strategy will be for some of these drivers with this small group trying to make something happen here. I think you're going to have to wait until either the 2nd or 3rd place car does something if you're any of these drivers in the back 2 or 3.
Saw the 47 of Tony Allison moving low and out of the way as the field were making their way into turn 3, and that'll be interesting to see here as well. Obviously, it looks like we've got about maybe 7, 8 drivers out here that are running off the pace with damage, just trying to salvage what they can, and it'll be interesting to see when those drivers are encountered by the race leaders, who are obviously up to speed and turning faster laps, being in a pack. But you look at a lot of these drivers here, those open drivers that are in this lead group, we saw what just happened there. Even with this small pack, the contact between Tony Manji and Robin Durr, do you think for these open drivers, they're basically thinking, okay, if we at least just finish where we're at, we're in good positions to transfer into the Daytona 250. And not only that, I mean, you look at the group we have up here, top 7, one of the drivers not in this group, Jared Darling, so that would mean that all these drivers, should they cross the start-finish line, take the checkered flag in the positions they're running, they're guaranteed spots in the top 15 or the top 16, the first 8 rows.
Yeah, I think that if you're some of these drivers trying to lock in, you got to be careful here, because there's still 14 drivers on the lead lap here. We're going to maybe catch the 13th and 14th place drivers by the end of this. They're kind of broken up down on the front stretch right now, so we'll see if that happens. But if you're one of these drivers and you get caught up in that incident we talked about the last lap, even an incident that you can't get back to the finish line, you're going to fall into 11th, 12th, 13th position, and that's, you know, we talked about it. I think you're going to want to make sure you're top 10 here if you want to transfer in for sure. Everything from there on back is going to be a question mark. So, and it's interesting to know, like, are these drivers, what are they aware of? I did one thing that is unique about this is we do have it highlighted for the drivers in the session to know who's locked in and who's not. So that is another interesting wrinkle that we haven't had in the past, where you're going to try to maybe potentially do some different things around drivers that are also not locked in. If you are one of those drivers that's not locked in, you can see that just as you're racing them.
Nice feature too for the drivers, because it's kind of one less thing that you have to really rack your brain to think about. When you're in qualifying races like this, normally your job is not only be driver, but also be your own spotter in the case of, who am I racing against? What position am I in? What goal do I need to set for myself in terms of a running position to make sure I am guaranteed in a transfer spot? Now that kind of alleviates the drivers and having to do all that work for themselves and allows them to basically do what they're supposed to do here, and that's drive the race car.
Yes, we'll see as we see the 24 and the 5 trying to race here with the 18. That's kind of breaking them up. Here comes a lapper on the outside. That's slow car one of the Morgans who is going to try to attach on. I think just no momentum there, maybe won't be able to. I thought maybe there was a chance. We have Josh Morgan and Noah Morgan. They're teammates, so I imagine they're related too. I figured maybe there was a chance that there was a new teammate jumping in there to help that 35 sitting in fourth, but I don't think he's going to get attached on. The next car is Robin Durr, who also has a relative in this front running pack, so we'll see if maybe a free teammate. We talked about it in that first duel. A lap car can sometimes change the energy. I know with only 6 cars running here single file, it's going to take a lot to mess up the energy in this small of a pack, but we'll see.
Yeah, the 35 and the 36 there with the Morgans, Josh and the 35, Noah and the 36, both correlating numbers and both purple cars. That wouldn't at any point get confusing if they were racing side by side.
Always got to make it tough on us broadcasters, right?
Less than 9 laps to go here in this second duel race. It's interesting. I'm not going to say you manifested it, but it was interesting when I asked you the question when we came on the air here for the second duel. You said, maybe we'll see the complete opposite of what we saw in Duel 1, where the first 2/3 of the race were relatively calm and then all heck broke loose in the closing stages. Well, took us till lap 8 in this second duel to see the massive one here. Took out a lot of drivers, have a lot of drivers running off the pace, and now we're almost forced to have green flag racing here with only 7 drivers up in this lead pack. But now as we've crossed the precipice of less than 10 laps to go, we're starting to see some drivers back here. The 35, the 18, they're kind of moving around a little bit. Do we end up seeing somebody try to manifest some type of momentum, some type of energy to get better than what would be an 8th place starting position and try and get 6th, or try and go from 6th to get 4th place?
I keep seeing King Cot, jumping up to the outside here. This run is going to get him a chance to move all the way up to 4th. I don't know if he'll get clear. You got to watch this lap car as they go around him. Manji's going to help. I think Manji's the type of guy, he wants to be aggressive. I think King Cot, he's shown that so far since this pack has gotten away, that he wants to jump up there and try something. I think these 3 or 4 cars in the back here are definitely gonna mess around and try to do something. And like I said before, I just don't think you can really do anything until that 2nd or 3rd place car does something, because they're going to be able to just stay. All it takes is whichever group has the most cars is the one that's going to go the fastest. Well, with only 7 cars, if the 3 or 4 guys up front stay in single file, those 3 cars in the back aren't really ever going to be able to do anything. So we'll see. I keep seeing Duda kind of lighten up, looking to the outside, looking to the inside. I don't know if he's maybe contemplating something here, but it'll be fun to watch in the closing laps of this if any of these drivers go for the win, or if they're happy for settling for their finish.
Racers have a racer's mentality. It doesn't matter what type of a race it is. They want to see nothing out the windshield, and when they see a race car in front of them, the racer's instinct is you want to pass that driver. We saw those moves there by Manji and Brink King Cot. So what percentage of that is experimentation maybe for next week's Daytona 250, and what percentage of that is boredom?
I was going to say boredom's probably part of it for sure, because you start getting, it's so easy just to sit here and just ride around. You get so, bored with it. You're like, let's try something. And the other thing is, with only 7 cars here, I guess if you pull out and make a mistake and you lose we see King Cot keep doing that. What are you going to do? Lose 2 positions? You can try again. So it's not like the big pack that you're going to see next week, where you would, lose a ton of positions if you tried something. So I don't know if they're really learning too much right now in this, because of it's going to be so different potentially next week, but you never know. You get green flag pit stops in a long race next week. You might get some smaller groups like this, and you might have a situation like this play out. But and they keep slicing around. King Cot again looking to the outside down the backstretch.
You bring up a really good point there as well, because the drivers back in that first duel race got to spend a majority of that race in a big pack. So they were able to get a little bit of an idea of with a number of cars, all that air moving around of what they could potentially expect next week in the Daytona 250. Here, maybe a little bit of a disservice to the drivers in the second dual race to the fact that they're not dealing with nearly as much energy, not nearly as much inertia in this group, due to the fact that a number of drivers end up getting taken out or damaged and off the pace here. So it might be interesting to kind of watch next week the drivers who transferred in through Duel 1 against the drivers who transferred in through Duel 2, if maybe those Duel 1 drivers have just the slightest bit of an advantage of what to expect when the green flag flies next week here at Daytona.
It's always oh wow, just looking at Aston Martin jumped to the outside there and then kind of just got a little loose. I don't know if this is something going on. This will definitely change the energy here and make it really interesting. Yeah, it's something kind of backing off here. I don't know if there's an issue with maybe a connection issue or something he's worried about, and going to give the room to these other drivers.
For Martin, being up in this lead group, pretty much all but certain he's going to be secured in a Daytona 250 starting position. So yeah, wondering exactly what it was that went on for him that last time through 3 and 4, but he'll slide into the 6th position. And oh boy, I'll tell you what, we may only have about a half dozen drivers in this lead pack, but they're going to race for this, it looked like. A lot of movement there down the back straightaway, side by side for third between Morgan and Kingcott. He'll pick up help from Matthew Durr. Don't give this victory to Hancock just yet, as we've got 5 miles left to traverse here in the second dual race.
I was going to say, if Kingcott and Durr can get clear, or even if just Morgan gets back to Kingcott now, when Kingcott was able to pull them back, it kind of just made a huge gap farther back here. I think if you're Kingcott, you want to back up a little bit here. He's closing in on them. I just don't know if he's going to have the run. I'm thinking Morgan's going to have this run now. We'll see if he uses it.
You notice the manufacturers here, Chevy, Ford, Toyota, first, second, and third. We know that a Ford will lead us to Green and Madalenas next week. We know the Ford will be behind him in our Duel 1 winner, Chris Heller. And we know a Toyota will be on the outside of the front row. So for Hancock, he's trying to make sure a bow tie is up in one of the first 2 rows as he'll take the white flag. Will he be the leader coming back to the checkers? Top side goes Jared Duda for the race lead.
Morgan's going to work with Hancock here and stay on the bottom. Martin's back in this. We see him up to 4th. I think Kingcott's going to have one more run at this too. He's closing in a little bit. These cars, when they make a evasive, lane change, I've noticed it's sketchy for them. So you got to be careful here. That top lane's going to be 3 cars here. Can they keep it straight?
We saw drivers wrecking as late as out of turn 4 to the start-finish line, the final lap in Duel 1. So right now, if I have any of these drivers, yes, race hard, but make sure you at least get back to the stripe. As off turn 4 for the final time, one final shot there for the 35, but it's gonna be Hancock, maybe? No! Morgan might have just sniped him, or did Kingcott get them both?
Looking like Hancock to me, but man, that was close. That was...
Wow.
Our pylon's showing even with Morgan, but Hancock at the top.
May not have been able to generate the same kind of energy as a big pack, but man, did they find a way to make this second duel exciting, as beaten and bruised, but victor nonetheless. It's gonna be the number 9 of Enoch Hancock who will take home dual race number 2, and subsequently he will start next week's Daytona 250 from the outside of the second row.
That was a wild finish. I think that, basically when they were coming down the line, Morgan had the run, and it just was, but it wasn't a huge run. So when he got to Hancock, kind of slowed him down by just getting in the back bumper, and once he pulled alongside, then it was kind of just the side draft staying together, and it was significant. You could see how it really brought Kingcott in there to those two pulling each other back with the side draft, and then they kind of both go to the wall to kind of protect, and that what probably won Hancock the race. If he did it, a split second after, Kingcott would have had enough momentum to get both of them, but it was 3 wide at the line. I can't wait to see the finish of this, but Hancock, I heard him on the radio with this competitor. He's never really won. He said a league race of any kind like this, so he really wanted it. Good for him to grab it as a new driver in this series. Go win your first start and start in the top 4 in the opener next Tuesday.
Of a way to make your debut. And we were talking about just how much could you possibly learn with so few cars up in that lead pack. Hey, if Hancock, Morgan, Kingcott find themselves in the conversation for the victory next week, when we get ready to put points on the table in the Daytona 250, they've already had a little bit of a test case of what they can expect and maybe what the car is capable of here in this dual race.
For sure. We'll see if we can grab Hancock here in a second. We're going to learn. I want to make sure we're saying his name right, too. We'll see. Is this Enoch? You got a copy?
Hello.
Are we saying it right? Enoch?
Enoch.
Enoch! There we go. I apologize, but we'll have it right next week. But you're in the booth. You're on live with us. Congrats on the win, and you brought it home. What was that final lap like, and what were you thinking coming off of 4? Were you worried that you're going to lose it, or confident that you're going to win by just the nose?
Oh, I was very scared the whole time. I knew Duda was pushing me. He was going to wait until that last lap, try and make a move. That's exactly what he did. I think turn 1, he went high. No one went with him. I knew I had a little bit of a gap to calm down. That whole last lap, if you got a guy behind you, they are thinking, how can I win this race? How can I pass the car ahead? You have to anticipate that. I didn't do a very good job. I let him build a gap behind. He got a huge run. And, I guess I did what I had to. This is the very first thing that I've ever won on iRacing, like a clash exhibition race, a race itself, a duel. This is the very first thing I've gotten. I didn't want to let it slip away, leading those last 25 laps or so.
Yeah, I was gonna ask like what that's like. Basically we had the big incident to start this duel off, and obviously you were able to get through that. But then for the next 25 laps, you're out front leading this thing up near the front, basically kind of just waiting to see what was going to happen with the rest of your competitors. How nerve-wracking is it? Does the nerves kind of go away after you get rolling, or do they continue to bubble as it's going there through all those laps? I imagine it felt like an eternity leading that race and waiting to get to the white flag.
It felt like forever. You got it exactly right. And missing that wreck at the start definitely helped a lot. I think Lady Luck slid me a good hand. I didn't even have to do anything. But, after a few laps, you kind of get used to it, and then it starts building. I don't know, maybe 10 laps to go, you start feeling the nerves. And it definitely affects you psychologically, how you drive, the risk you're willing to take.
Well, it worked out in the end. You're gonna start in the top 4 next week in the Daytona 250. What's your outlook next week? What's the goal for the 250?
I think my plan going in here was just run fine, run clean, and we ended up doing that while leading most of the time because the field died. But I want to do that in the next race too. Just run it okay. Let the race run its course. Don't be involved in what happens. And go out there. It's all about the finish. It's not where you are in the middle of the race. It's not where you are at the start. It's about how you finish. That's all that matters.
Well, we're gonna give you one opportunity here to shout anyone out and send out any thank yous. Since you won, you get that opportunity with us. Go right ahead.
I want to shout out my family. They weren't watching this race, but sometimes they watch my races, and I want to shout out my church group. Definitely going to send this to them. They watch my races sometimes. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll talk with you next week. Congrats on the win, and good luck next Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Well, my goodness, if we needed any type of a precursor to have the hype for next week's season opener here at Daytona, Don't think you could have asked for a better couple of dual races. We saw a little bit of everything here tonight, Ross, and we may end up seeing it all over again for 100 laps next Tuesday night.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the long race with the full field will do with these competitors. It's always fun to see, especially if we can get some long green flag runs, maybe potentially green flag pit stops. We saw a close battle in the opener last year, just as we did in the duels last year, and here we are tonight getting another close finish in the duels. So hopefully it all comes down to a final lap where we can see another great finish. That was awesome, really fun to to put both of you and I in a position of not knowing who won. So we'll see if we see it again next week. I can't wait for next Tuesday and to see the whole field battle it out for the opener.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to Christopher Heller. He was your winner of the first dual race, and Enoch Hancock brings it home with the checkered flag here in dual race number 2. He said that it's not about where you start, it's where you finish, but a lot of drivers here tonight had to make their way into the Daytona 250 field. Cannot wait to see who the 40 drivers will be that will be taking that green flag next Tuesday night. Well, we thank you all for joining us here this evening from the World Center of Racing. Field is set, and they now get ready to take back to this Daytona International Speedway next Tuesday evening to kick off the 12th season of the Great Lakes Premier Series. Thank you once again for joining us here tonight. For Jeff Johnson, our producer, Ross Brockman, I'm Seth Cole. We'll see you guys next week as we get ready to run the Daytona 250 here on Split Second Broadcasting.